Aloha and welcome to the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center's An Afternoon with the Author. I'm your host, Deidre Teagarden, and we're so thrilled to have all of you join us today. Juliet Kono, the author of Anshu, is our guest today, and I will get around to introducing her in just a moment. But wanted to let you know, if you have questions or want to learn more information about the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center, you can find out a lot of information on the website at nvmc.org. So we encourage you to go there. For all of you who are new to the call today, welcome. We want to let you know that we enjoy taking your questions. So you can type your questions in as they come to you in that little question and answer box at the bottom left of your screen. I promise to get to as many as we can before the end of the event. And also, this is being recorded and will be available on our Nisei Veterans Memorial Center YouTube channel in about a week. So again, we welcome you to check out our YouTube channel and see this and other talks that you may have missed in the past. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our author today. Miss Juliet Kono was born and raised in Hilo, Hawaii, and is a survivor of the 1946 tsunami. She has written extensively about the Japanese American experience across the generations. She seeks to give a voice to those who have otherwise faded into oblivion. And she especially wants to give a voice to those women immigrants who came to Hawaii as contract laborers, depending on the tensile strength of their memories. She has written 2 books of poetry, Hilo Rains and Tsunami Years, a short story collection, Ho'olulu Park and the Pepsodent Smile, a novel called Anshu, which we will be talking about today, and 2 books of linked poetry with 3 other women poets called No Choice to Follow and What We Must Remember. She is presently working on another novel, Misao's Body. She is a recipient of the Hawaii Award for Literature, American Japanese National Literary Award, and the U.S.-Japan Friendship Commission Creative Artist Exchange Fellowship, the Po'okela Award for Tsunami Years, and Anshu. She is retired and lives with her husband in Honolulu. Please help me give a warm Maui virtual welcome to Ms. Juliet Kono. Juliet, welcome.
Hi, Deidre. How are you doing?
Doing great. Really excited, as are all the participants today, to talk story with you. And again, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
No, thank you. I greatly appreciate your asking me to be here and have my work, share my work with you.
Well, we want to jump right into that work and talk a little bit about your background. You were a wartime baby, and that had a great deal of influence on your writing and your perspective. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was born right in the middle of the war in 1943. Well, sort of middle, and I wrote. I mean, it went through, it was part of the family legend. My grandparents were here in Hawaii, and my grandmother was sort of like a sojourner. She loved Japan, but she liked here also. My grandfather loved Hawaii. So, they always talked about what was in Japan, what was in Hawaii, and this and that. So anyway, that was the beginning of a lot of my stories. Yeah, their lives.
And I know that you actually had some of your family members were interned during the war in Crystal City.
Right.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, they lived, these 2 families were from Santa Rosa. My grandmother's brothers lived there. And they came up in 1924 or maybe 25. They came up through Mexico and acted as Mexicans to go into Santa Rosa. And they built their homes, and they were very well established in the Santa Rosa community. And so when the war came, they were sent to Crystal City and were supposedly going back to Japan, be shipped to Japan, but they went to another camp later. So that's our connection with people in the internment camps.
Did your family talk much about it? I know you wrote a poem about internment, and I'm just wondering if that was from the memories that perhaps were passed down to you through family members.
Right. I could read it. It's in Hilo Rain's this book, and it's called Internment. And the poem is about my grand aunt on the mainland. Internment. Corralled, they are herded inland from Santa Rosa. After the long train ride on the Santa Fe, the physical exam, the delousing with DDT, the branding of her indignation, she falls asleep. Days later, she awakens in an unfamiliar barracks, Crystal City, Texas, on land once a pasture. Not wanting to, not meaning to see beauty in this stark landscape, she sees nonetheless through her tears on the double row of barbed wire fencing, which holds them in like stolid cattle, dewdrops, impaled and golden. And so, though they suffered and they felt, unhappy, she tried to find something beautiful in that setting. And she always talked about how sad they were, but nonetheless, they persevered and eventually went into another camp.
That whole idea of gum on and the perseverance and gum buddy definitely runs through so much of your writing. And is that, that obviously comes from your family.
Yeah. I mean, we were all very poor. My grandparents were not, rich by any means, but they worked hard. And my grandfather died when he was about in his 50s. And so my grandmother and the children, took charge of doing the cane and cutting the cane, etc., until all the kids said, "Oh no, no more," and did their own thing. So
before we move on, I know you have another poem that we had asked if you would read, and it was just about you growing up in the time of war, and you were a blackout baby. Right. Yeah. So do you have a poem about that?
Yeah, I do have a poem about that, and this is this book is no longer available, but you can get it from the UH repository under Bamboo Ridge Press. Just go into UH repository, Bamboo Ridge Press, and it'll come out. Perfect. Blackout baby. The Japs, my mysterious kin, have just bombed Pearl Harbor. Each night thereafter, each home is allowed one blackened light. Windows are tarred and cracks under doors are stuffed with rags, chastising the light that dares to wander. The block wardens come, drawn like termites to light. Violators are startled by the bang on the door, and if you are a Jap, you have to be careful. They could send you to internment camp somewhere in Colorado. One night, a woman labors in the heat of the blackout light. Into this darkness, a child is born. It is I, a blackout baby, nosing in the darkness with heavy eyes, a yellow belly filled with a livid cry. And that's the poem about me being a blackout baby.
So powerful and so sad. And you know, you were so young during this time. When did you start putting all of these feelings and into writing? You're very prolific, and I'm thinking you started when you were very young.
No, as a matter of fact, I started very late in my 30s when I was working in the police department, and I was on the night shift, and you had to stay up, so I had to do something, and I started writing these poems in dispatch. And eventually I started sending them out to Bamboo Ridge Press, and got some of these poems published. Yeah, and later it became the book Hilo Reigns.
So you started with poetry, and then when we were talking the other day, you mentioned, you know, how you kind of got a late start. Also with your master's degree, you were a little bit older.
Right. I started school very late, and I graduated when I was 40. No, yeah, I guess I graduated. I'm sorry, I graduated when I was 50. I'm losing time. I went to school at 40 and graduated at 50 with my master's.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
started working.
And started working, but you had started the writing at 30. And did you go to school you went to school for writing, or?
No, when I started writing, and I started sending these poems out, and some of them were being picked up, I thought to myself, I really do need a college education. I need to know more. I need to know what I'm doing and how I'm doing. And so I decided to go to school, and my husband said, oh yeah, go. And you know, he was, yeah, he was very supportive.
That's good.
So that was good.
That's good. So at around this same time, and we read about it in your bio as well, you went to Japan on a US-Japan artistic fellowship. And that had a lot to do with some of your subsequent writing, but share with us about that experience.
Okay, in 1999, I was writing, I wrote a poem about the atomic blast, but I was not very, sure about it. And I started thinking, oh, I'd like to write a book about, the atomic bomb. And so I wrote a poem. It was unsatisfactory. And then I wrote a short story about the atomic bomb, and that was not very satisfactory either. So I started writing Anshu. And I really needed to do research. So I applied for this scholarship and I got it. And due to my husband's dismay, he said, oh, you're going to Japan? And I said, yeah, you can come and visit me. So I was in Japan, and I did all my research. I spoke to people, and I had formulated in my mind a lot of what I would want to do in my book. And that I did a first draft, or very rough first draft, in the time that I was in Japan.
So, and how long were you there?
6 months.
And you visited, you went from Tokyo down to, you spent some time in Hiroshima, where actually you had family.
Yeah, I had family there, but um, I didn't see my family there. Um, it was, I guess they felt that they didn't know me, and so they sort of said politely, um, I knew your parents, but they didn't extend any invitation for me to visit them.
Right. And there is that Japanese concept of, there's not that immediate connection, or maybe your immediate connection shifted. So,
Right.
There's no longer a relationship there,
Sure.
but very interesting. Okay. So you did the research, you'd already started on the book Anshu.
Mhm.
So I want to kind of jump into Anshu. But before we get too far along in the book, I know it was very important for you to share some mahalos today to some people. So
Right.
let's do that
Okay.
first.
I'd like to thank Eric Chalk and Daryl Lum for taking a chance on Anshu, because without them, it never would have been published. And I just wanted to say how it's been a wonderful journey. And the book will be translated into Japanese and into Italian. But I haven't seen any drafts, so who knows?
Congratulations. Okay, so there are like I said, a lot of people on the call who have read the book, and in fact, we have one person already writing in a lot of questions about specific things in the book. For those who might not have read the book, can you talk a little bit more where the word Anshu comes from, and is it a Buddhist idea? Just give us a little bit more background.
I was studying for my ordination in Shin Buddhism, and I was going to the Buddhist Study Center, and I said, I told my Reverend teacher, Mr. Toshio Murakami. He's deceased already, but I said, I need a title for my book, and so I told him what my book was about, and he said, "Oh, he'll look up, something." And he came up with Anshu, and that's a very, very old word in the Buddhist text, and it means dark sorrow. And so I said, "Oh, maybe that's what I'll take." And so, I have to say thank you for that idea.
So the book is very sad, but not
Mhm.
depressing. But at the same time, it's also very hopeful.
Mhm.
Was that your intent? And how were you able to do that?
I don't know. It wasn't intentional. It just sort of, worked out. And I
Did go ahead.
I played with fire a lot as a child. And so I wanted to bring that in. I tried to bring in things that I knew about, and as well as in my research, sort of combine them with what I knew, because I didn't know anything about the firebombing. I didn't know anything about the atomic blast. And so, I had to make this up in a sense through the research. It was very, very intense at times. I didn't, I would say, oh, well, forget about this, but something just kept me going. And so eventually this is how it worked out. But I know it started as a poem, and then it became a short story. And then I was still not satisfied, so I wrote the book. But I'm going to read a short excerpt, and there's part of the poem, the first 3 lines as part of the poem, but the rest of the poem is gone. But it goes like this. Born of fire, fire my element. Himiko, child of fire my name. Don't play with fire, Mama said. Do you want to get burned? I loved fire, played with it every chance I could. My parents worried that I might get hurt, burn the house down, or destroy the cane fields that took years to grow. And all that the sugar plantation camp people had worked for would go up in smoke. Worst of all, kill someone, if not myself. And so that's the start of the book.
And that fire motif goes throughout the novel in every section. When were talking the other day, I asked you, how did you pick these things to write about, or did they really pick you? And maybe, as you just said right now, you were very involved and mesmerized by fire. So did this pick you?
Yeah, at one point, I think very early when I was writing parts of this story, I said, especially when I was writing the very beginning areas, I said, where do I want to take this? And so what's the ultimate fire that somebody could be in? And so I settled on the atomic bomb. But the problem was, how do I get the protagonist to Japan? And so I made her pregnant. And a lot of times girls were sent to Japan. And though this family did not have money, they sent her to Japan to have her baby. So that's the start of how Himiko got to Japan.
So let's talk about Himiko a little bit and how she evolves throughout the book, because the Himiko at the beginning and the Himiko at the end are the same, of course, but very different. How does she evolve through the book?
Basically, she's a very vain, self-centered girl, and disregarding her sister, especially, and playing with fire in very different instances. In the fire of sex, the fire of playing with matches, burning things, etc. Takes her toward this journey to the ending of the atomic blast. So that's how it sort of evolved. And each time she encounters fire in different circumstances, different ways. Fire and anger, and in all kinds of ways that you can see fire. But that's basically, how I tried to do the story.
And the story is, sorry, okay. Go ahead.
No, it wasn't intentional, I think. Well, I wanted the motif, so I carried the motif right through, but sometimes it wasn't intentionally. It came out of the writing. The fire ideas came out of the writing. I don't know how to explain that, but.
Well, and then the book is divided into 4 parts. There are 4 main sections, and there's a Buddhist saying or a Buddhist teaching at the beginning of each of the stories. Why did you do it that way?
Sometimes the mind has to, I guess, in something this big, sometimes the mind needs guideposts. And I thought, the time that I was writing this, I was learning Buddhism. And so I thought, okay, I can use these teachings of the Buddha. And I took 4 of them and use that as guideposts. Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about some of your other characters in the book, because they also range from very, very cruel to
Right.
incredibly kind.
Mhm.
Do you have some that, I mean, I'm sure they're all, you enjoy all of them, but talk about some of the other characters that stand out to you.
Okay. Everybody asks me about Harue Auntie, right? Because she's so cruel. But it's a tradition in a way. In Japanese culture, my mother would explain to me that sometimes when you go into another family as a wife or a daughter-in-law, they don't treat you very kindly. And so Himiko is an outsider. And so, you know, she's the last in the family to be considered. Yeah.
And so for those who might not know who Auntie Harue is, Himiko is the protagonist.
Oh, yeah.
She goes to Hiroshima because she's a
Shima.
child. And, oh yeah, not Hiroshima, sorry.
Tokyo.
To
She
Tokyo
goes to Tokyo. Mhm.
to live with her mother, her uncle, and his family. And the wife is Auntie Harue, and
Harue.
she's not excited to have Himiko there.
Himiko there, yeah, because she puts a burden on the family's finances, and you know, food is scarce, etc. So there's much, she resents Himiko very much. And in Tokyo, there's another character. Himiko joins her name. Oh, I forgot her name. Oh, she becomes the prostitute who is her great friend.
The next door neighbor.
Her neighbor. And but you know, I can't remember her name very well because to me she was just, you know, she was just there to help fill the that's terrible. I can't remember.
No, and I'm looking right now. It is escaping my mind as well. Is it Noriko?
Terrible. No.
Not, it wasn't Noriko.
No.
Well, she was the next door neighbor.
Their neighbor. Hamada-san, was it?
Yeah,
Hamada-san. Yeah. And the only thing about her was that I mean, she was sort of like a bridge, sort of like a foil against Harue Auntie. I mean, I guess I used her as somebody kind as opposed to Harue Auntie.
And there were a lot of kind people that she runs into
right.
throughout her life.
That's right. Throughout her story, yeah. So
what, anybody else that has a deep place in your heart of the characters in the book, or was there a turning point? You know, there is a turning point in the book, and you know, how did that come about? All of a sudden she no longer seems so vain and arrogant. She becomes a sympathetic character toward the end. And how does she get there? Is that through the kindness of the Reverend? Is it because of the other issues that she faces? What was your intent in having her sympathetic by the end?
I wanted her to grow, and you know, she could have stayed, I guess, but she went through too much in order not to grow. I mean, if she didn't find anything redeeming, not redeeming, but good about, not good, but if she didn't find a way to change and to do things, in a better way, I think she would have not been a sympathetic character. She would be angry all the time. But in the end, toward the ending, she's more settled, and she went through a lot of fire in order to become what she is at the end. So, but you know how people are, right? I mean, we change, we do change.
Yes, we do. And I think the book is a good teaching mechanism that we can change and we can overcome our shortcomings and be forgiven and move on. Let's take a couple of questions that have come in because there are a lot. The first one is from Patricia Takemoto, and she's asking what kind of fireball killed Himiko's father at the beginning of the book.
Okay. Japanese call it hinotama, or Saint Elmo's fire. There are various names for the fireball. And anyway, when we were in Kaiviki, where my grandparents lived, they always talked about fireballs. And my aunts were chased by fireballs, and they always told us, if a fireball chases you, you're going to die. I mean, my aunties didn't die, but they had, you know, they had encounters with fireballs, and yeah, they always talked about it. And they said, you know, it was just a whirling fire, and it would just circle them or be in the cane fields sometimes, but they were always frightened by it very much.
Patricia,
So,
also it is, yeah, and that fireball is shown throughout the book, even when she's in Japan, she encounters that. Patricia is also asking, she said she's never heard about the Japanese treatment of hibakusha before, and she thought that the Japanese would be more sympathetic, and can you talk a little bit more about this? So in the end, Himiko is in Hiroshima during the bombing, and does become hibakusha. And yeah, do you want to talk about Japan and hibakusha? I mean, when we lived there in the 80s, it was a topic you never spoke about, and hibakusha were kind of shunned.
Yeah, when I went to Japan on the scholarship, I had a translator who went with me to Hiroshima, and we tried to get in touch with a lot of people to talk to them about their encounters with the bomb. And a lot of them would say, no, we're not saying anything, you know, they don't want to talk to us. We went to Daigaku, some Daigaku, and she knew of a person there and a teacher there, and the teacher said, no, you know, we don't do that. And I had most of the information I got from the museum, from books, and other things, you know. And I had to learn all about the bomb, how, you know, how big it was, how many people died, etc. But yeah, it was mainly going to I went to Doshisha University, which had an English library, and at iHouse in Tokyo, they have a library that a lot of the books were in English. So yeah, I don't know if I answered her question.
I think you did. I think it's a cultural
Yeah,
and while the emperor was still living, you know, that wasn't talked about, and you know, even our own experience living over in Japan and my mother trying to interview hibakusha. And hibakusha are people who did survive the A bomb. It was just never
yeah,
talked about, to
silence.
just
Yeah,
silence. Only
right,
recently has it been okay to talk about it, but
right. I think it
let's,
would be different if I went today. I think I would, I mean, get more information from people.
I think so. Um, Things have changed a little bit.
Yes.
Let's pivot. Do you want to do another reading from Anshu?
Oh, okay. Um, Let me read about her scars. Um, and I'm sorry. After the bombing, um, she never wanted to see herself in the mirror, but she finally garners enough courage to go to the mirror and to look at herself. And so this was the first time I had seen my face since the atomic blast. Had he seen me, Kazuo, who was her boyfriend, would not have recognized me. My face appeared to be 100 years old, whereupon I let out a soft cry. From that moment on, no one would call me Hichan again. On the right side of my head, where the scalp had been burned, a thicket of hair had grown in, white as snow. A raw-looking red keloid scar on the side of my face clawed its way toward my eye and cheekbone, the lines of red skin capering into my face and gripping it like the talons of a falcon. I slipped off my kimono. I let it drop off my shoulders and saw that the burns on my neck had not healed entirely, the flesh hardening, becoming crusty as cooling lava on its run to the sea, a flow that moved down my body. The sweep of my hair may have hidden the scars near my eyes and cheek, but the burns on my neck, arms, and hands could not be readily concealed. The biceps of my right arm had little flesh. The worst burns were along the shoulder, my back, and the soft part of my upper torso down to my lower stomach. One breast was practically gone, and no hair covered the burnt side of my pubic bone. There was only a white fleshy mound of keloid tissue. White flash burn marks covered both thighs down to my knees. My forearm was charred in spots, my elbow melted down, my right hand webbed like a pin-tailed duck's foot. I had trouble bending my right arm as well as some of my fingers, and I had lost 3 toes on my right foot. Areas of my body still oozed a smelly pus where the skin was broken, and the only wound that had healed was the one on my right thigh where a shard of glass had pierced. And so this is Himiko with all her scars and her and her and her and the burns and everything that came with the bomb.
And I
So
imagine that in your research in Hiroshima, you read many stories about and saw many photos that
right
reflect what was reflected in
in here,
Himiko.
right. So
Um, so let's pivot a little bit to your relationship with Bamboo Ridge. You've been with Bamboo Ridge for how long?
oh, I wasn't there early on, I think, until I started writing poetry. So it was in 1980, in the 1980s, 83 perhaps. I was I was there. Um, and my relationship has been I mean, all these years I've been with Bamboo Ridge, and they've been such a wonderful uh, place to be in my writing and the support of my writing. Everybody's been so helpful, and um, it, it's been, it's just, I've been blessed. You know, everybody was so kind and everything.
Well,
And
there are other authors at Bamboo Ridge that say you are truly a mentor to them. And do you see yourself as a mentor and a guide to other authors?
yeah, I help if they ask me. You know, I help people, and I like helping people. They ask me, "Oh, does this form work?" or "How can I do this?" Or yeah, I try to give them my time, um, and it's been a good relationship. Made many friends, and a lot of regard for all the writers in Bamboo Ridge Press. They're just wonderful people.
Um, actually taking a step back because some more questions have come in about the book, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Toward the end of the book, it's not really, one isn't really sure what Hee-chan does. And Patricia is asking, does Hee-chan ever return to Hawaii, or is that up for our imagination?
Maybe that's not, you know, I the ending was different from this Anshu here. Um, the the original ending was that Akira, her boyfriend from Hawaii, you remember Akira,
Yes.
the first boyfriend, the one she got pregnant with. Um, he comes back as one of the soldiers to Japan, and he goes to look for her, and he finds her, and he brings her home to Hawaii. But it seemed too pat, too clean, you know, a love affair that, you know, lasted all the way. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's very different from the ending of the novel here.
It almost seems like it wouldn't fit because everything good that she seems to have, you know, goes awry. But there's one place in the book, and I forget which, I don't know who is Reverend Hara who was speaking to her and talking about the fact that you can't enjoy the good things in life. You can't have happiness if you don't also have sorrow. And there's that one place in the book where she does have happiness for a short amount of time. And do you think she's able to appreciate that happiness because of the immense sorrow that she has encountered throughout her life?
Yeah, I I think if she were looking back, I think, you know, I'm sure um, there's a lot of redemption um, in her heart, um, because she was so vain and sometimes so not so caring about others. I mean, if you look at what she did to Sachang,
That was her like Hanai
uh,
sister in
yeah,
Japan.
yeah, and the one she pushed into the fire, um, uh, because of anger, the fire of anger, right? And but and her uncle at the end says, you know, he doesn't want to talk about it anymore. He doesn't feel that he knows that she probably he probably she probably pushed her cousin, but I think that um, at the end, she forgives herself too, you know. I'm not sure.
Patricia have a, oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Patricia had a question about Hee-chun being so angry at Kazuo, and why was that? And did she feel that he abandoned her?
Mhm.
You know, was that the case? Is that why she was so angry at him?
Oh yeah, I mean, she was, it seemed as if they were going to get married and things were going to be really great. And but after the bomb, he just didn't even come to see if she was all right. And she was very angry. Rightly so. I mean, they had promised each other that they were going to meet again, etc. But you know, but then she also realizes that it's impossible.
Jean Toyama says Juliet is a wonderful, generous mentor. She is being too modest. So, Peter is asking, early on, you were talking about the original draft of the poems and the book, or the two poems, and you said that they were not acceptable. And why is that? Was that authors' opinions or publishers' opinions, or was that your opinion?
Not a, I'm not sure about the question.
So when you were talking earlier about the two drafts of Anshu, or the poems that you were writing, and you said that they were not acceptable, and then that's why you really wanted to go to Japan and do more research. That statement of not acceptable, was that because the publisher told you it wasn't acceptable, or was that your own opinion that it wasn't acceptable?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they were hollow. I mean, they didn't have enough information. And so, I mean, I needed, when I wrote the poem, it was okay. But it was not satisfying. It wasn't fleshed out as it should have been. And so I was really happy when I wrote up the information for the scholarship that I won, that I would have this opportunity to delve into a lot more material so that I could really flesh out things into the story. Yeah.
And all told, how long did it take you to complete the book?
More than 10 years. I started in, I think, just after I finished Tsunami Years, maybe 2008. And then I didn't finish the book until I didn't finish the book until, let me see. I know it took about 10 years.
Okay.
To finish this book. Yeah. So.
Don Mitchell says he has no question, but he's sending much aloha to you from the mainland. He said, it's wonderful to see you, my friend, and hear you reading from your very fine novel. Let's see. Marion says, Juliet is a sensitive, brilliant writer whose word choice gives me chicken skin and inspires me to work harder at the craft. Scott Kikawa says, yes, Jean is right. Juliet is not just a wonderful poet and novelist, but the best editor. And let's see, one more question or statement here is from Patricia again. And she said, I find it so interesting that leading an ordinary life was important to Himiko. Maybe that's because Americans put more value on being outstanding, exceptional, and unique. What do you think there's a cultural difference there between? Asia and
Um,
Western ideas of what's important?
yeah, I I'm not sure, but I think she got that way because she was trying to be different at the beginning. I mean, she was, you know, a sort of like a girl that didn't care much for um, how she was. She did everything she wanted to do, and she was vain. And so, toward the end of the book, I mean, she realizes that it's not those fancy things, or I mean, not that she wanted fancy, really fancy things, but um, to be ordinary is okay, you know, to be just settled, to be okay with your life, even though you're scarred or whatever, you can accept things for what they are. It's a very Buddhist concept, I guess. I'm not sure. But yeah.
Okay, I like that. Jeannie Mata is asking, what do you believe has been your greatest accomplishment as a writer? And then thank you for spending your Saturday with us, she says. What is your greatest accomplishment as a writer?
My greatest accomplishment is that my mind is still here. No, I'm just joking. My greatest accomplishment, I think that sharing with people my thoughts. I don't know if I could call that an accomplishment, but I think that I would like to say that, you know, um, I've been very lucky to have been a writer, and I worked hard in school, and I was late in everything, but I persevered, and yeah,
Good.
I don't know what my greatest accomplishment is. If people are happy with the work, I feel good. Yeah.
Well, there are obviously a lot of people on this call who feel good about you and your mentorship. And just two last things. Daryl Lum says, you don't edit Juliet Kono, you just get out of the way. And the final question for today is, it's not very common, this is from Brenda Kwan, it's not very common for there to be a crossover from poetry to prose so artfully, and vice versa. How do you feel being a poet influenced your novels?
Very much so, I think. I mean, when you do poetry, you see things in different ways and metaphoric terms. And so when I was writing Anshu, I think that sort of carried over into the story. I tried to put in, you know, descriptions that were metaphoric, or tried to play with language a bit more. So yeah, it's interesting how that all worked out. And yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, good questions. So we are coming to the end of our hour. I'm going to come back to you, Juliet, in just a moment. But wanted to let everybody know that we thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Our next speaker in October, on October 16th at 1:30, is going to be Gail N. Harada with her book of poetry and work, Beyond Green Tea and Grapefruit. So please join us for that. We do have signed copies of that book available here at the office. And I also wanted to let people know we have sold out of the books of Anshu, but if you are interested in getting books, you can go, Juliet, you can go to the UH repository.
No, you can you can try Bamboo Ridge Press, their bookstore. So just go online.
Okay. So just go online. So I'm
Mhm.
going to come back to you, Juliet, for some closing remarks. And I don't know if you have closing remarks prepared, but maybe my question for you, and then you can give closing remarks, is your book is dedicated to peace. It
Mhm.
says for Darius and for peace. And then you signed your book, May We All Live in Peace. So that is so wonderful, especially in this day and age of everything that we continue to have happening in the world. What message of peace do you want people to take away from this, or just to take with them into life in general?
Well, first of all, I think everybody has to be kinder to others, and we should always try to look for the take the right view of things instead of or a good view of things. And and to speak to others kindly and well. I think we are always jabbering but not really thinking about what we're saying. And there's a lot of things, and conduct ourselves in good ways. Um, yeah, I I think that would be what I would say. It's so, the Buddha says that all life is pain and suffering, but you can alleviate the pain and suffering by following certain precepts, like taking the right view of things, or speaking well, conducting yourself in good ways, etc. So I would leave that with people on this day, on this Saturday. Yeah.
Thank you.
And everybody, cool down, everybody. Don't get so angry all the time. So my last words.
Okay. Well, those are wonderful last words, and we should all take them into next week and beyond. Let us be kinder to one another. We are so thankful for your generosity and kindness today in coming on and talking to us. We thank you so much, Juliet Kono. And
thank you.
To everybody else, be well, stay safe, and until next time, ahui ho. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.